this while, we have been talking about the various events that pertain to the political realm of the French Revolution. That is, we have been talking about how the French society was during the old regime, how the estate system was in place, how the members of the third estate were exploited and oppressed by the members of the first and the second estate. We also learnt about the absolute monarchy that was in place. And after that, we went on to tracing the various events that together made up the French Revolution. We also talked about those events that followed the French Revolution of 1789. But from this, we can understand that all these events were about the political affairs of the French Revolution. But do you think that this political influence was the only thing that this French Revolution had? As in, did the French Revolution have any impact on the society and culture of France? Well, we are now trying to find out answers to this question. The French Revolution, or any revolution for that matter, has very obvious impacts and influences on the societies as well. Because a revolution could be as social as political it is. While we talk about revolutions, we take into account the political things only, as in the various things that make up a revolution in a political sense of the term. But a society is made up of people, and no society can exist exclusive of the people. And when people rebel, they want to make their opinions heard and felt. They want to voice their anger and resentment, and they want to overthrow the existing social orders. Now, when these ideas of changes, when these ideas of rebellion suffuse the minds of people, it invariably means that there would be changes in the socio-cultural landscapes as well. So from this, what we can infer is that the French Revolution had great influences on the society and culture of France. So let us now find out how it left behind a lot of impact on the French society. Now let us briefly talk about the old regime. We learned that during this time it was the estate system in place, and this estate system was very discriminatory and oppressive in nature. And along with the estate system, it was an absolute monarchy. That is to say, the absolute monarch of France was at the top or helm of power. And any book, any pamphlet that was published in old regime had to be in accordance with the monarch's wishes. So it was the monarch who got to decide what book was supposed to be published in France during the old regime. So this means that a very strict censorship was in place during the old regime. But we have talked about how the French Revolution brought many new ideas to the fore. And the French Revolution was all about overthrowing the oppressive and the repressive existing social orders. So one of the many things that this storming of Bastille and the following French Revolution did was to abolish censorship in France. And by the abolition of censorship in France, people could now feel and they could now vocalize their opinions. So words and ideas and thoughts were no longer restricted and caged, as you can see here in this illustration. People's new ideas and thoughts, new beliefs were now liberated from the erstwhile cage of an oppressive social order. Now, along with this, the 1789 historic document called the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen played a very important role in the French society. This is because this document now introduced many civil liberties to the French citizens, as in people were now given the right to life, the right to property, and when they were given these rights, they were also granted the freedom of speech and expression. So formerly during the old regime, if anyone wanted to oppose the monarch's ideas, if anyone was feeling dissent from within, they did not get any option to vocalize or talk about their ideas openly. But following the French Revolution and the adoption of this historic document, the people of France were now given the freedom of speech and expression. Now, the abolition of censorship has been very crucial to the French masses, because with the abolition of censorship, now different printed forms of expression like newspapers, pamphlets, books, magazines now spread among the masses. And in these books, magazines, pamphlets now spread the new ideas which were revolutionary in nature. So earlier on we learnt about how it was only the bourgeoisie which was inspired by the ideas of the Enlightenment thinkers and philosophers. This is because the bourgeoisie had access to education, which is why it was possible for them to read the books that were written by the Enlightenment philosophers. But what happened to the illiterate masses? It was not possible for them to read those books which were of a better kind. So for this reason, now these new printed forms of expression helped the spread of revolutionary ideas among the masses who earlier on were not able to read the books. And with this idea spreading throughout France, these new ideas also spread beyond the territory of France. That is, these ideas now spread throughout Europe and in different parts of the world. So people were now able to reflect on their own position in the society. People were also able to talk about how they were oppressed. People were now given the awareness of their oppression, of their suppressed state in the society. And it is only when a person gets the enlightenment or the knowledge of their subordinate position in the society that that person will be able to vocalize their anger and resentment against the social order that is oppressive in nature. So this abolition of censorship in France has been a very important thing to the French masses. Now in our lessons we talked about how different governments came to power following the outbreak of the French Revolution. Firstly, it was the National Assembly, which was then followed by the National Constituent Assembly. The National Constituent Assembly was then overrun and replaced by the National Convention. And the National Convention eventually gave way to the Directory. Now all of these governments failed to bring political stability to France, because France was embroiled in revolution and different kinds of wars with several monarchies throughout Europe. And during this time, France was also going through a severe state of economic crisis. So all these put together weighed very heavy on the governments which failed to do anything productive and constructive to the French society. Which is why the failure of the French Directory eventually paved the way for Napoleon Bonaparte to assume power as the Emperor of France in the year 1804. Now when Napoleon came to power, people now started hailing him as the liberator of themselves, because they believed that Napoleon will be able to give them a new direction in life, and at the same time Napoleon will be able to make France a better and more powerful nation in the world. And Napoleon did so to a certain extent, because when Napoleon was in power as the Emperor of France, he managed to bring most of the neighboring regions of France under his control. And after extending his control in the neighboring regions and monarchies, he placed his own family members in the positions of power in those places. Now Napoleon was able to do a lot of things. He introduced various laws in France that not just influenced the French society, but it continued to influence various nations in the world. He introduced laws that were to secure private property, and he also introduced a new system of measurement in the form of the decimal system. Now Napoleon introduced a lot of changes that had a very sustaining influence on Europe and in different parts of the world, but eventually Napoleon was seen as an invading force. because Napoleon went on to controlling most of the neighboring regions of France, and these regions were reluctant to give up their power and be subordinate to Napoleon's power, which is why Napoleon was then deemed as an invading force, as a despotic ruler. So despite being one of the most able military commanders and generals that the world has ever seen, Napoleon was overthrown in the Battle of Waterloo in the year 1815. And after the defeat of Napoleon in the year 1815, Bourbon monarchy was again restored to the power over France. Now before proceeding with this lesson, let me ask you a question. In which battle was Napoleon defeated in the year 1815? Was it in the Battle of Trafalgar, or in the Battle of Verdun, or in the Battle of Waterloo, or in the Battle of Valmy? Well, the correct answer is Battle of Waterloo. It is in the Battle of Waterloo that was fought in the year 1815 that this great commander and general Napoleon Bonaparte was defeated. Now we have talked at great length about the ideas of liberty, equality and fraternity that became the clarion call of the French Revolution. Now over time, these ideas of liberty, equality and fraternity spread throughout Europe and in different parts of the world as well. And these liberal ideas, these very democratic ideas, have in fact survived as the legacy of the French Revolution. Now the French Revolution had been instrumental in suffusing the minds of people with new revolutionary ideas. This is a point that we have discussed all along. Now through the 18th and 19th centuries, the European powers had their colonies established in different parts of Asia, Australia, Africa. And during this time, these colonized people were also fighting against the colonizers, because these colonizers were the ones who suppressed and oppressed and brutally tortured the colonized sections of those regions. Now when the French Revolution broke out and when the French Revolution managed to overthrow the monarchical rule, then these colonized sections were also inspired by the ideas of the French Revolution. And in fact, colonized populations in different parts of the world now reworked their idea of freedom from bondage. How did they do so? Being inspired by the French Revolution, these colonized people now organized their own movements, their own expressions of freedom. And while they did so, many of these colonized sections fought very hard wars and battles against the colonizers. Lot of blood was shed on these colonized regions, but these colonized people could not be held back for long, because they had already begun marching on the way to freedom. Nothing could hold them back any longer. And after some points of time, the colonizers were defeated. And with the defeat of the colonizers, these colonized nations now gave birth to modern independent nation states. And these independent nation states are the ones that we know in today's world. Now this illustration here shows you the maps of many modern independent nation states, and mind you, these independent nation states at one point of time used to be the colonies of the European powers. If you look closely, you will be able to locate the Indian map here as well. Well, like the Indian masses, all these colonized people fought their own battles, fought their own movements against the colonizers to give birth to independent nations. With this, we come to an end of our discussion on the French Revolution. In this series of lessons, we have been tracing how the French Revolution was not an isolated event. There were many things happening in the French society during the old regime that together led to the outbreak of the French Revolution. And while we talked about the outbreak of the French Revolution, the storming of Bastille that happened on July 14, 1789 has been the most important point because that marked the official outbreak of this revolution. We took into account the various events that made up the revolution and how the revolution eventually paved the way for various governments to gain power in the French society. Subsequently, we also looked at this French Revolution from two other angles, as in what was the role of women in the French Revolution and how this French Revolution also played an important role in the abolition of slavery in the French colonies. And subsequently, we talked about the impact that this French Revolution has had on different parts of the world. So this brings this entire series of discussions on the French Revolution to an end. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million+ questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it's rewarding too. So register for free now.